UFO encounters has been reported over 75 years, igniting some of the history's most controversial cover-ups. Millions of people claim to have seen a UFO. Some encounters are so shocking and mysterious that they've earned the label the Big Secret. Why the Big Secret uses an entertaining and informative cultural lens to provide a rare glimpse into the minds of the experiencers with the hopes of better understanding their psychological traumas. With the help of in-depth research, we delve into their lives and their stories. I'm Roderick Martin, UFO researcher and MUFON UFO investigator. I like to research UFO encounters that have left a mark. In each episode of the show, I would examine a UFO encounter that's maybe lesser known today, but was huge when it happened, which led to the motivation for government and religious institutions, along with everyday citizens, for keeping the Big Secret out of sight. This is Why the Big Secret. If you've had an encounter or a big secret you would like to share and you would like to be on our show, visit my website, whythebigsecret.com. Look for the guest request page, and we're looking forward to talking with you soon. If you enjoy listening to my podcast and would like to support my work, there are several ways you can do that. You can become a Patreon supporter by going to patreon.com/whythebigsecret, or you can donate directly to Cash App or Venmo. You will find those links inside the show notes. Now, enjoy the Why the Big Secret podcast. And thank you for being here with us tonight.
Thank you, Roderick. Thanks for inviting me. And hello, everyone. This is my first soiree with Clubhouse. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you're gonna have some fun then, because let me tell you, we break our beginners in really good here, and so the fact that you have all this experience, we know you're gonna take it well. So, and it's all in good measure because everybody here seeks the truth, and that's where our audience is.
Absolutely. And happy to answer any questions you might have of me. So go ahead.
Well, first,
fire away.
Okay, I want to first start with, and we're not going to go, and I have to get to it. So, we're not going to go all the way because we got a lot we're going to talk about tonight, right? Because I got some of your stuff, and I just want to really touch bases on a lot of things tonight because, again, this is a rare opportunity. But, again, you and I have talked offline and stuff, so I'm just really happy about that. But one of the things that a lot of people don't know, if you're here in the audience, that it all began for him back in 1967, because you had an account of strange lights over in the Malmstrom Air Force Base in Montana, which those lights temporarily disabled the nuclear missiles at where you was working. And if I'm wrong about that, let me know. But the whole point is, we talk about this all the time. We talk about the capabilities of this phenomenon and what's happening out here. And I'm just really excited about it. So can you just kind of share with the audience a little bit about that story? And you don't have to go deep in it because we got a lot we're going to talk about, but that's one of the main things. And I've had many conversations here where people say that just can't happen. They can't turn them off.
Yeah, I'll briefly go over it. In March 24th, 1967, I was in command of 10 nuclear missiles. These were Minuteman I missiles. We were located at a site called Oscar Flight, which is about 100 miles east of Great Falls, Montana. But this was all under Malmstrom Air Force Base. I got two calls that night. First call, the guard upstairs, and I was 60 feet underground. I was locked in. I was not allowed to open the door and go upstairs, so I did not see this object. But the first thing I got was a call from my guard upstairs, said there were strange lights in the sky, flying very fast, stopping on a dime, reversing course, making 90-degree turns. And he couldn't explain what they were, but he wanted to report it because it was very strange. He said they were not aircraft. As simple as that. They were not aircraft. And I was not particularly blown away by that report. In fact, I thought he might have been pulling my leg a little bit, but he really wasn't. This was a serious report. I told him, all right, keep me informed. Hung up. 5 minutes later, he calls back. This time he's screaming into the phone. He's very frightened and is babbling, basically. Wants me to tell him what to do. I said, what's going on? He said, the guards are all out looking with their guns, weapons drawn, and they're looking at this glowing red object pulsating, hovering just above the front gate. And he wanted me to tell him what to do next. I said, just make sure nothing's coming in. The gates or the fenced areas. So that's basically, we hung up after that point. I went over to tell my commander about the call. And then all of a sudden the missiles shut down while this object was still up there. And it was described as a oval-shaped light, reddish-orange pulsating light, very bright. But all 10 of the missiles shut down while this object was there. Now, the same thing happened previously, we found out later, at another site, and that was Echo Flight. That was about 35 miles away. But that was about 8 days earlier. That was March 16th. So within the span of 8 days, we lost 20 nuclear missiles to UFOs. Same thing happened there. UFOs reported over the missiles themselves in that case. So that's basically it. I was sworn to secrecy, never spoke about it after that day until 1994. Long story short, there was a book called Above Top Secret by Timothy Good. I happened to pick it up at a bookstore in 1994, and it talked about missile shutdown at Malmstrom in 1967. I thought the Air Force had declassified the incident. I had been sworn to secrecy, hadn't talked about it for, 27 years. And so I went to MUFON, got a guy by the name of James Klotz to help me file FOIA requests, and we did ask about this incident called the Echo Flight incident that I mentioned. They said it was classified, but since it had been so long, they were declassified. They declassified Echo where I thought I was because it sounded like what had happened to me. They declassified that, started sending me documents, and a lot of those documents are in that book. One of the books I wrote called Faded Giant. So you'll see a lot of the documents in there. Anyway, at that point, I started speaking publicly. In 1996, I gave my first interview, and I've been speaking about this ever since. In the U.S., 15 foreign countries, and there you are.
I appreciate it. And one of the questions I have for you, Bob, is that, and this is going to get into some of the debate of the ETs or UFOs or the phenomenon itself. And so I'm just going to dig into this particular question. Tell us, why you, in your own words or thoughts, why would they turn off our weapons or show us that capability?
Well, of course, I can't answer that. I can't answer why they did what they did. I can speculate, and I have been speculating because these two incidents that I mentioned are not the only ones where UFOs have come over missile sites and either shut them down or interfered in some way with communications. This has happened many times. We spoke about some of these incidents at the National Press Club on October the 19th of this year. You can go to my YouTube channel, Bob Salas YouTube channel, and you can see our presentation of many other instances of what that are similar to what I just described. So, from my research, I've concluded, and this is just a personal thought or conclusion, they're simply trying to warn us to get rid of our nuclear weapons. And so that's just speculation on my part, but of course, I can't read their minds. I don't know who they are. I know they're extraterrestrial. I'm convinced of that. But, I can't specifically answer why they did what they did.
Wow. Yeah. And, it's one of those things that, we talk about it, like I said, here within our group and community all the time of, they come in peace or benevolence and, or as Lou Elizondo says, they're a threat, right? So,
Well, no, I don't think they're a threat. If they wanted to do damage to us, they could have easily done it. I want to emphasize that there was no damage to the missiles themselves. And I've never heard of any damage to any of the other incidents. So, to me, they're just warning us. It's just a message. It's just a warning. They're not trying to, engage us in any kind of a conflict or a shooting war or anything like that. Or they're not interested in invading us. Otherwise, they would have done it a long, long time ago.
Okay. All right. That's fair enough. And so at this case, and again, I'm not going to get you to go against the grain out there, but we do have some of these people out here. So what did we say, or how do we respond to this group of people that says, oh, they're a threat, we need to put all of this military power in place? And then, of course, we'll get into in a minute the zero-sum game. You and I'll talk about that in a minute, and then we'll talk about the Trojan horse. But the whole point is, so why are they sitting here trying to put this in public that we have this possible threat? And then, of course, I hear all these false flag rumors of this invasion type, and we ain't going to get in that conversation. But why? Why are they in history says they hadn't done anything, but yet we're trying to put this narrative together of the possibility.
By they, are you talking about
those
what
people,
I call
the cabal? The cabal.
The cabal,
yes,
yeah.
I'm talking about the cabal.
Well,
the ominous they.
Yes, and for the audience, the cabal is that secret society that's running. This is a world-connected view with military might and everything else, and so we'll have you, Bob, to go ahead and really, tell the audience a little bit about the cabal if you can, and then you can answer that. Yeah.
Well, there's no question in my mind that there is an international organization, very well organized. Probably started after Roswell. There was a group called the Majestic 12 Group. You've probably heard about that. I'm certain that they did exist as the Majestic 12 Group. There are a couple of documents that have been released that have been validated. But basically what they're doing is they have retrieved craft, they have retrieved bodies and artifacts. There have been other, let's say, crashes or craft that have been retrieved. They have been studied, analyzed. Technology has been gleaned from, analyzing what they've got. and probably applied in industry in some ways. This is an international organization, meaning there are agents all over the world that are working with a cabal that is probably being run by U.S. intel agents. So let's see. I go into it in great detail in that book that I wrote last called Unidentified. I go into the origins of the cabal and what they do it and how they do it. So I don't want to dwell on that too much.
No, that's fine. I think, but
I'm anyway. Certainly convinced that they exist. And so right now, they in DOD, let's say, and in Space Command, this new Space Command, they are looking at this phenomenon as something that we ought to worry about as a threat to our national security. Well, of course, they're going to look at it in that view because it allows them to build and create new weaponry to fight this so-called threat. Even though the public is not aware of any threat, they don't even, for the most part, aren't aware of this phenomenon as being real. We're just getting started with that disclosure only recently. So how can the public buy into this threat? But the DOD and the ODNI, Office of Director of National Intelligence, have already come to this, are probably going to gear up to come to this kind of a conclusion. So that's one thing that I'm concerned about. If the public doesn't get involved, if the Congress doesn't have open hearings about this, it'll go in that direction.
Wow, that is something amazing. Just a quick break for those of you here for the very first time. I have Robert Salas here. He's the retired United States Air Force officer, and he's just sharing his story about what's going on with these UAPs and nuclear weapons. And if you have an opportunity, up at the top, you're going to see our YouTube link and Why the Big Secret's the new brand. And I want you guys to go ahead, and if you haven't subscribed to the YouTube channel, go ahead and do that right now, and that will be just a beautiful thing to do. Tiffany, if you can you post a link to his book so we can put it up?
Absolutely.
All right. And then that way, if anyone needs to get this book, and everybody should get this book and support some of the things that he's doing, and because I'm going to go over that in a minute on his congressional things that he's been pushing. We got a lot to talk about. And so, and we got the right person to talk to about it. And that's what I'm excited about as well. So, all right, Robert, my next part to this question, and this is not to put anybody out there, and these are things that we would do, but we have a lot of people out there that's again signaling, this is a threat, or we got to be ready. We don't know what these things are. And when I start looking into this phenomenon, and one of the reasons that I changed the brand from Extraterrestrial Evidence, even though it's the name of this club, was to go into Why the Big Secret, because I think it's digging deeper into these topics. And so I went out, of course, did a little trademark on that. But the great part about it is, and I'm going to ask you the question several times tonight, but when we get down to this phenomenon, I think you and I talked about this a little further on the phone not long ago. And what I wanted to really gather for the audience is, when we get down to this UFO phenomenon, and we understand there's a secret to why we don't want anybody to know what's going on. I mean, they're just not going to tell us. But then I always go into the bigger part of this. What is the big secret and the reason from your point? I think we talked about it. Why is this phenomenon kept this way? I mean, we know money and power. We know we're going to talk about the aphrodisiac for power secrets, but why? Why is this thing like this?
Well, there are a couple of reasons, and I'll just go over the reasons as I see them. One it may be that and this is probably true, that those that know the secrets that have been studying this phenomenon for decades now um, are unable to present to the public any way we can deal with this phenomenon, because they are so far advanced technologically, and probably have the ability to create advanced weaponry that we can't even dream of, that there's no way they could protect the public and present a rational case to protect the public. So that's reason number one. Uh, uh, Reason number two, the secrets that they've gleaned over the decades are very valuable. In other words, like I said, they could be used to develop maybe new products based on new technology that they have now been able to discover from these craft. So these secrets are very valuable, and they can be used as bargaining chips, let's say, bargaining chips with other countries in exchange for intelligence from other countries, let's say. This phenomenon is occurring in every country in the world. So those countries also have their own secrets, and so that's how they can maybe barter some of these secrets. So it's about power, it's about influence, it's about money, and corruption, and these are all rather dark reasons, but they exist out there in the secret world of international intelligence, right? That's about the best I can do as to why our government has been keeping these secrets. But I'm convinced that they're going to try to keep these secrets, this cabal will, as long as possible. And again, it's even though we now have an outline of how the Congress will interact with DOD, ODNI on the UAP.
Is that the Trojan horse theory? We'll get to that.
Well, no. Well, what I was going to say is, even though we have, we can talk about that. Even though we have an outline of how we're going to work, how Congress is going to interact, I think the cabal is going to do whatever they can to withhold secrets.
I got a question for you from our audience. I just been hit on a Stargate, and that's what we call our back channel, the messages. That's how you being part of our government, you being part of representing this country, and in all the things that you've been through, do you find any disappointment now that you now know what you know, and you're seeing how to handle things and how they treat the public in our government policy? Do you find any disappointment in their actions?
I'm not sure I understand by disappointment. Could you rephrase that question?
Well, I guess where I'm going is, basically the question would be, are you disappointed in our government? In other words, in how they're treating the public with this phenomenon. And when I say that, in other words, I would assume growing up, the pride of being in our military, the pride of serving our country, people are dying for this. And I respect that. And in fact, I have family members. So then when you see the government doing what they're doing, it's like they're just spitting on people. Like, okay, especially how they was treating ex-military people or people like yourselves who, hey, you don't talk to anybody about this. We're going to threaten you this way, that way. And it's just, I don't know. It just kind of, to me, it sounds disappointing, and maybe not for you in that way.
Well, what I'm concerned about, and this is, again, part of what I sent you in my write-up. What I'm concerned about is that, yes, the Congress has included this as a real activity, that they expect the DOD to investigate the UAP and come up with reports. What I'm concerned is that they will be satisfied with just, writing the law and not paying attention to what is going on behind the scenes, because this cabal has been operating behind the scenes for decades. They've been studying this. They have talked to each other. Agencies within the government have talked to each other about this. They know this is real. They have recovered craft, et cetera, and they've kept this from the our congressmen, senators, the committees that have oversight on intelligence agencies will just sit back and buy whatever these intelligence agencies tell them about this in these secret briefings. Remember, most of these briefings that they're going to get here are secret. We're going to get in the public just a kind of an overview of what they're doing, but certainly not many details as I see it.
It's good. Oh, go ahead, Till.
I'm sorry. I was just curious if you could speculate. Do you think that the combination of the threat narrative and the secrecy may net kind of a net positive for the overall movement towards disclosure, just because it will bolster funding and mainstream acceptance with building up, when you have people in Congress releasing reports, it kind of takes away a little bit of that giggle factor.
Well, Tiffany, you actually have a great point, and she has a great question. I want to tie into her question, Bob, and because she actually was, great minds think alike. I'm thinking of the disclosure of that zero-sum game, right? What you kind of written before about the mathematics of the guy, von Neumann and Morgenstern published a book on the game theory. And,
yeah, right.
And they used the zero-sum game, which is actually what she's talking about, as far as one side gets a point, another gets a point, but ain't nobody winning. But it's like they know they can play this game with us. And so if you can address her question, I think it ties right into that. So let's get into this zero-sum game.
I'll get into the zero-sum game in a minute, but I think what her question is, has this new requirement laid on DOD and ODNI to study the UAP, come up with reporting, etc., is it a positive? And it certainly is. It is going to energize the conversation, the public conversation. And there have been many congressmen that have already stated they are very interested in getting to the bottom of this. So that's very encouraging. But as I mentioned in the letter I sent to you, there's things called special access programs, which have, like the development of the SR-71, things like that, were actually these dark or black projects before we knew about them. And at any rate, okay, let's go into the zero-sum game.
That's why, it kind of ties up, but go ahead, yes.
Yeah, because, I agree with, was her name Tiffany? I agree with her that this is a positive step. But the zero-sum game is simply this. Let's say you have a game between two players, and they're playing for 100 chips. There are only 100 chips in the pot, right? And whatever the game is, you're playing for those chips. And the fact that maybe as you play the game, you win some of the chips. The sum of the chips is always going to be 100 that are available. And that's where the zero sum comes from. If you have 25, the other person has 75. If you have 50, they have 50. It's that kind of a game. And the only way to win this game is to win all the chips. In this case, with the cabal, what's at stake is full disclosure, or disclosure, let's say, meaning they have told the public, or will tell the public, what they have discovered about this phenomenon after studying it for 70 years. And that's a win. That's a win for us. If they are able to, let's say, keep half the secrets and tell us half, then the game's still on, because we don't have all the chips yet. So that's what I mean by playing this zero-sum game. We need to keep pressing for all the information that they've got. Otherwise, they still are have an advantage over the public, and they will continue to, deceive the public and play their game outside of the public purview or oversight. See, all I want to have here is complete disclosure, because if we don't have complete disclosure, we've got a corrupt government. We're talking about, money, influence, power. All that is being held by this small group of people within the cabal. And we don't want that in a democracy. We don't want to have that in a democracy. We want the public to be aware of what our government is doing.
We all heard about Senator Reid passing, and again, I've always followed him and how he's pushed for disclosure. What kind of impact is this going to have on our community?
Senator Reid?
Yes.
Well, he did what he could. He started this ATIP program. I think I don't want to go into it too much right now because it's complicated. But he did initiate an additional study of the UFO question. When was it? Back in 2012, I think, when he started it. It went through about 2016 or 2017 before it was shut down. But so Senator Reid was a stand-up guy. He was very interested in the subject, and but now that he's gone, we have to carry on. We have to keep pressing for the truth, true disclosure.
Okay, that takes me into what just happened. Of course, I think with the NDAA, right?
Right.
And even though we think that's a good thing, the way they structured in this, but I was also reading some things that you published and wrote about how the definition of UAP has changed a little bit to, airborne objects that are not immediately identifiable. And they're going back to known objects as aircraft, like stars, and all these crazy things to make the data just be all over the place. So we can't really figure this out. But yet they're putting this out here that we have this new program, and it's supposed to be thorough and when it comes down to this. And once again, it looks like we're heading for the okie doke.
Well,
what are your thoughts?
Let me tell you the problem with this that I see right off the bat is most Congress people, senators, just about all of them, none of them have studied UFOs in depth, let's say as much as I have. I've been studying this for 25 years, and there are plenty of people out there that have been studying it just as long. There's a lot of evidence out there. There's a lot of material out there that the Congress is simply not aware of, only because they haven't even looked at it yet. And yet they're going to be taking the DOD is going to be presenting reports to them. The first one is due in 90 days, and it'll be classified, and it'll just cover the last year. We don't even know if they're going to get into things like Roswell or my incidents at Malmstrom. We don't even know that because the amendment to the NDAA does not speak to it. So the problem I see is it's going to be too easy for the cabal to pull the wool over Congress's eyes. They're going to drag their feet on answering their questions and probably get away with it for some time. And what I'm concerned is about public indifference on this subject. I spoke in the year 2001 in Washington, D.C. We had a big conference. A lot of great witnesses went public, a lot of notoriety, a lot of press. And then in about a week, bupkis, nothing more in the press. So I've been through this many, many times, again in 2010, again in 2013, and just recently, on October 19th of this year, I went to the National Press Club, spent a lot of money to bring a lot of other witnesses in, organized it, invited the press, but got very little mainstream press again. So there's kind of a dual problem there. We've got a little the public is a little bit overwhelmed with the whole subject of UFOs. Most people think it's science fiction. They don't want to take it seriously. And so the result is indifference. And I think the cabal knows this. They're working for that to continue, the public indifference on this subject. And if they succeed at that, they win. They win at this zero-sum game we're playing.
Wow. And, it sounds like or seems like what they're doing is, okay, we're going to give Congress information. Oh, yeah, we're going to give them something. But since we know that they don't have the knowledge to really look into these things, we're going to give them all these anomalies, all these reports that just inundate them for years. And before they can figure out, they ain't going to even know what they're looking at. Is that what I'm hearing?
Right. That's what you're hearing. You bet. And they are experts at this. Remember, one of the things that they've been doing all along is disinforming the public. They have lied about Roswell, just blatantly lied about Roswell 3 or 4 times publicly. They lied about the Condon investigation. I don't know if you're familiar with that. That happened in 1966 to 69, and then the Air Force came out and said there's no national security interest here. We're no longer going to report on UFOs. But UFOs still kept shutting down missiles even after that. So, and there's been a constant, disinformation campaign by the cabal to keep the public off balance and not have them take this thing seriously. How many serious reports have you seen on television lately? Even though, we've had this public pronouncement that UFOs are real. There's something real to this phenomenon. That was stated categorically by the Director of National Intelligence in the preliminary report that came out in June of this year. So you tell me, how are we going to get this off the ground so that the mainstream media really takes this seriously?
Well, that was one of my things that I've been really internally trying to do, and people have been really taking it, I think, thinking I'm just kind of playing around when I start talking about hashtag UFO taxes. I'm like, people don't know that they're spending money on this. And I think if everybody knew, especially the non-believers and the jokesters out there, that they are actually in on it too, their tax money, and they're going to work every day and they're paying for all of this stuff under the table, at least we get enough people asking, what are you doing with our money? They may answer something. And again, they're just going to devise a way of doing that. So that from the ground, that would be one of my things, is just try to get more people to go curious. You're like, really? They're using my money? Because that's the only thing that people care about anyway, is their pocketbooks, right? I think. I'm not saying it for everybody. But at the end of the day, that's where it affects. I mean, because that's what they want. They want more money, our money, to use our money to do things, right? So the money is the deal.
Well, I don't see that. You see, do you know what the budget is for the national defense?
Okay, lay it on us.
No, I'm asking you. Do you know the amount?
No, I don't know. I thought it was like $300 billion or something. I don't know.
No, try $778 billion.
American dollars?
Almost American dollars. That's for this coming fiscal year. And that's just for the Department of Defense. Okay, so are you watching how our Defense Department spends that money? No. Do you really care? Is that something you look at every day? No, of course not, because none of us can even keep track of how that money is being spent. So I don't think the public gets involved in that nitty-gritty detail.
So what do you suggest from and I know you've been pushing, so how do we support what you're doing, but then also
all right, well, what we absolutely need, and what will really tip the scale here, is open hearings, open government hearings. We're going to have open hearings early next month on the January 6th insurrection in Washington, D.C., where they're actually going to bring witnesses in, swear them give them an oath to take. And that's what we need for the UFO question. We need public hearings so that the public will hear witnesses, real witnesses of this phenomenon, like myself and many others, who will tell their stories. And then the public will start demanding their congressmen and senators take this seriously and get some answers. And especially this coming year, when we're going to have another midterm election, I think they'll pay attention more if the public demands it. So that's how you could help. Contact your congressman, senator, ask for public hearings on the UFO phenomenon. Because if we
go ahead. I'm sorry.
If we just sit on our tails and think that now that we've got this thing in the Defense Department requirement to look at UFOs, if we just think that's going to solve the problem of disclosure, it is not. I guarantee you it won't. This this cabal is real, and they will drag their feet. They will disinform the congressmen who are asking them questions. They will not give up their secrets easily, believe me.
Wow. And I have one of our audience that, and we'll bring some of them up in a little bit. You're going to be able to take some questions from the audience shortly?
Yes, of course.
Okay, great. We'll be doing that in a minute. But Jim in the audience was just saying that he thinks or believes that a march on Washington would probably open up some doors. What do you think about that?
I don't think so. First of all, who's going to march? I know there's a lot of people that believe in in the subject of UFOs, but it's not so much of an emotional issue like other issues where people did march, women's rights, things like that. I don't see it. But if you do march, I'll be there.
I can't say I'm with you on that. I'll be there the best I can, I think. But all right, before we start bringing a few audience members up in a little bit, one of the questions I have, or statements a little bit, is now that you mentioned, contact our congressman, and I know things have changed, because you're talking back in the 40s and 50s and 60s, even the Congress people wouldn't touch the subject, right? But today, right, there's been a shift. But even when you think about our presidents and you think about the temporary office of the president, still, it sounds like when they did this last release, it's like, okay, Congress said we're going to put a program together to monitor the phenomenon, and DOD announces what they wanted to do. And it's like, even though they're using the same money, it's like Congress is giving them the money, but allowing them to tell them we're going to do our own thing and we ain't telling you nothing. How does that work? And they're in the control of the purse, but yet they're still getting slapped in the face with some of the things that they're doing.
Well, look, I know people who were working in dark projects. They're called, I think I mentioned it, SAPs. Anyway, I know people that have worked in there and had to report to Congress on a regular basis on how the program was going, how the project was going. And what these people tell me is that it is so easy to pull the wool over Congress people because, well, think about it. They are not engineers for the most part. They don't follow advanced technologies. They're just not interested or knowledgeable enough to ask intelligent questions. So it's very easy to spend fabulous sums of money on things that they don't really understand why they're being spent. It's just very easy to do. And that's the thing I'm concerned about with the reporting requirements for UFOs by intelligence agencies. These guys are pros at pulling the wool over their eyes. They do it all the time. They've done it for many, many decades. This is nothing new to them.
It just sounds crazy enough that they go to Congress and, you've seen the movies where they go and ask for all the money and they go, oh yeah, we need $20 zillion to better electricity. And they'd be like, yeah, we'll sign off on that. Oh, what's the results? Yeah. We got 300 watts instead of 200 now. We're doing good, but yet it's like they're that stupid.
Yeah, they're that stupid. Yes.
It's like, all right. Oh, that's crazy. I mean, but that's just my scenario of it. That's the way I see it. Like, oh, really? They'll just hear anything. But all right, so what we're going to do, we're going to bring a couple of people up. Now, for the audience, before we bring you up, let me give the rules here. You asking questions and you're not statements. If you got a few questions, we'll let you ask those questions. Then if you go past this, you're going to hear this noise, and that means that I want you to shut it down so he can answer. So basically, again, we want questions. And if you have anything, and he'll be gladly to answer it from there. And so we do have some of our trusted members. And again, if you got a party hat, if you're not connected to any social media and all that stuff, we're not, you're just not coming up today. But from there, so Tiffany, if there's anyone in our audience especially on the first row here, that's followed by the speaker. So those some trusted people that have a question, we can bring them up, and we can have them to answer the questions. And then once they ask their question, we'll bring them back down. We'll bring them. Fair enough.
Understood.
Okay. So anyone else that want to come up and have a question, go ahead and raise is the hands on for them to do that?
Yes.
Okay. All right. And we'll bring you up. But again, if you do not If you speak out of turn or if you do anything that we cannot handle it, we apologize, and we will move you back to the audience. We like to run a tight spaceship here. So first up, and I have them in line. So we will have 118. Can we get a name? What's your name? 118.
JD.
All right. So you have a question for Bob. Go ahead.
Yes, sir. Thank you for the space, and thank you, Mr. Bob, for coming up tonight and speaking and willing to answer questions. My question for you is, do you know anything about Victor Schemberger that supposedly invented anti-gravity and was supposedly part of Operation Paperclip?
I don't know who that person is. No, I know Townsend Brown experimented with anti-gravity, but I haven't heard of this other fellow. I know what paperclip is.
Thank you, sir.
Yep.
All right, Joshua, you have a question, and we'll move 118 on that there. Thank you. Joshua, you got a question?
Yeah. Have you read the book UFO Crash Retrievals by Leonard Stringfield, or did you know him at all?
Stringfield, it goes back a while, but I have not read his book. I've heard of Stringfield. Any specific question about that?
Yeah, it's just there was just dozens of UFO crashes and dozens of aliens that he talks about that were covered in this book, and I'm just kind of threw me off of it.
Well, there's no doubt in my mind that there have been many crash retrievals, and that there were, groups within the Army, like Clifford Stone was part of one that participated in crash retrievals. So I have no doubt that there have been many.
All right, then. Experience. Definitely, Experience has a large club here as well. So, Experience, what's going on? Long time no see. You got a question?
Roderick, how you doing? Tiffany,
right.
how you doing? Good,
right.
Good. Captain Salas, how you doing? We met at the Washington, D.C. Briefing there with Stephen Bassett. I was his guest. We had lunch. So it's good to see you on Clubhouse and continuing speaking. Yeah, no, so I just wanted to say, I know it's not full disclosure, but I think in history, your story and the story of your fellow officers are going to be an integral part of the path to really identifying the truth here. So I just want to commend you and thank you guys for even having that briefing in Washington. I think it was important, regardless of the turnout and the coverage. It's still going to be something I think we'll look back on as a huge deal. So my question to you is this: with the addition of the NDAA and the offices kind of being born here in the public eye now officially, I think is a significant step. It's not what we want in the terms of disclosure, and we'll probably get spoon-fed stuff from the congressional reports that are, classified and unclassified. Whatever we get in the public is fine. But how do you feel about the agencies that are kind of directly involved with this now? I think they eliminated some civilian agencies, but mostly it's like DOD. I think, I don't know if the Air Force is mentioned in there as well as far as offering intelligence, but just the makeup of these offices that are supposed to be, the UAP like task force. Just your thoughts.
Yeah, well, the requirements of the on the DoD for the study of UAP requires that all agencies having any knowledge of this subject to report it to this so-called office that they're going to establish. And cooperate fully. how does this office know who has what, and how easy will it be for those agencies to withhold information? I think it'll be very easy for them to do that. What these requirements do not speak to is what those agencies had other agencies, such as DARPA. You know what DARPA is?
Yep.
It's an organization that works a lot with these black projects and develops new or looks at new technology, etc. But the NDAA did not speak to that at all. So, again, this is our government. There are 17 intelligence agencies, right? 17. There's the Air Force, there's the Coast Guard, the Navy, the Army, on and on. There's all the alphabet agencies, the NSA, the CIA, etc. Are they all going to really work together and give up their secrets? I mean, if you worked in government before, you know how jealous agencies are about what they know, and they like to keep things to themselves. I mean, this is going to be a nightmare, really.
Yeah, that was my question, because it just seems like there's a mishmash of a bunch of different ways to get the information. So who pulls rank to say, yeah, this is right. That was. So you pretty much touched on what I was feeling.
Yeah.
To clarify, to make sure that I'm following, is what you're saying that even though we put the rule that the information has to be turned over to this central pool, right, so that we can all have access and knowledge, and all the agencies are talking to each other and sharing, what you're proposing is that that's a difficult thing to enforce when you don't know what someone has, and
you don't know what you don't know. You don't know what someone has. The Air Force officially does not acknowledge UFOs as extraterrestrial, for example. But I know for a fact that they've been tracking this subject since Roswell, and very closely. And so, who's going to straighten all that out? Who's going to straighten all that out? Well, that's why I say the best thing that can happen for us to push for disclosure is open hearings. Why is that? Well, if you have people, witnesses, actual human being witnesses that come forward and say this happened, and I've got the documents to prove it, I've got witnesses to prove it, then it's going to perk up some ears in Congress, and they're going to start, when they do have their classified briefings, they're going to start asking more intelligent questions about specific incidents, because they will hear those specifics from witnesses like myself.
Yes, I did notice that one of the most striking lines in the report that came out this past year was that these things were found on multiple data points. So it wasn't just an eyewitness or just a radar or just this. It was multiple data points to substantiate these things. So that is a very good point. I think next is Jim. Roderick, if you're seeing.
Yeah, and I had a quick question. So, Jim, hang on 1 second. You are next. This may be my little theory, Bob, and one time I was just doing some research, and I was looking at a UFO. It was a report, and one of the things that caught my attention was that this report showed that a UFO came out of the ocean, which was seen and reported by our Navy at the time. And so at this point, this thing goes up into the sky and flies across, and then the Air Force is tracking this same UFO. And then, of course, as it keeps going, and if it crashes or do anything, the theory has it that the Army or the CIA, all these people have their own internal reports about this one sighting, but they're not sharing the information with each other, right? And it's like, how many of this we may have where everybody think they got something, but if they were talking to each other, they figure they got the same thing, and we can kind of close in the gap. But then when you come to the technology side of it, it's like the Navy want their technology, Air Force want their technology. Also, they're supposed to be protecting our country anyway, but they don't even want to share that information. So who's in charge?
Well, that's a question I just asked. So you're right there with me.
Yeah, and it's like, wow, this is just, I don't know. So
yeah, right.
All right, Jim, your question.
Yeah, I mean, this is ultimately a puzzle that has to be put together. I said on this channel before that we have a 50-50 chance that what we're seeing are aliens. Either they are or they aren't. If they're not extraterrestrial, then it's government toys. Mm-hmm. If it's not government toys, then it's extraterrestrial. So how do you feel about that?
Yeah, excellent point. The question of extraterrestrial is a very simple calculus, very simple. Did we in 1967 have aircraft that could fly at very fast and stop in midair, reverse course, stop, make a 90-degree turn, have no engine noise, and then shoot up at very high speeds into the space? No, we didn't have that in 1967. I forgot to mention, did we have some object that could penetrate 60 feet of earth and concrete and then penetrate my cables leading to each missile separately? These cables are triply shielded against electromagnetic interference, and then upset a particular piece of hardware on the missile and shut it down. No, we didn't have that in 1967. We don't have that today. So by we, I mean nobody on Earth has been able to build anything like that. If the Russians were able to do that in 67, they could do it today and shut down our missiles. They would have demonstrated they can do that and thereby make our missiles obsolete simply by showing us what they could do, right? They haven't. So if the Russians haven't built this, the Chinese haven't done it either, it's got to be extraterrestrial. It's as simple as that. These are extraterrestrial objects. There is no question about it.
All right. So, Byron, how's it going?
I'm standing in line picking up some food. If you want to skip me and come back to me, that would be great.
We will do just that. All right. So our next person is Herlin, and Robert Herlin has been with us quite some time. He comes up, and he actually is part of our military, works for NORAD. So I'm sure he has a great question for you as well. So Herlin, go ahead with Bob.
I'm not sure about the great question part, but I know.
You can make it simple because even simple things are great nowadays. Believe that. Like 3-letter words. Is that a UFO? That is simple, but that's a great question.
One of the questions that I had experienced actually when I came on, he was actually really asking that, so I got to hear that answer. So I guess my second question would essentially, I've been in and out of the room, and I apologize. I might miss some of the content, but I talked to Tiffany about my activity tonight. But one thing that I was going to ask Robert is, so maybe he might have already spoken about this. So when he said, and I think he just alluded to the last point that he made. So I'm assuming you were missileer, probably, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So.
And Herlin, can you give the audience your background because you're in the military? So just kind of bring my audience just in 30 seconds of what you do, please.
Active duty U.S. Marine. The job that I do here at NORAD has nothing to do with what I do in the Marine Corps, believe it or not. But in the Marine Corps, I'm a intel ground intel. So, but I guess that's kind of how I got wrapped up to what I do now. But what I do now, right now, I'm an emergency action controller. So, I guess Robert would know, to execute, his missions as a missileer, you need to get emergency messages that are essentially tell him exactly what to do with those missiles if you need to engage them or whatnot. So that's essentially I do that part. Mainly, and then on the secondly, I monitor obviously some of these radars and stuff like that for early missile warning, stuff like that, and missile defense and all that jazz, just in a nutshell. So my question was essentially for him, when he's because you and I, Roderick, we've been through this, and I've hardly disagree on that portion, just because I know, like, at least in it, just for my side, because I don't know what Robert does on the ground. I do my part, he does his part, whatever order to execute nuclear options are given, right? So when he says that there are things that have shutting down the missile, I just wanted for him to clarify, like by yeah. By shutting down, what exactly did that mean?
I'll be happy to clarify. So I mentioned the object sent a signal to what we call the logic coupler. The logic coupler connects to, we had an inertial guidance system. By that, I mean, we didn't have GPS in 1967, right? What we had were gyros, we had accelerometers, things like that would, once the missile was launched, determine where the missile was located and how fast it was going and what direction, what azimuth, etc. This requires a stable platform that had to be properly adjusted for its azimuth, various angles of the missile position prior to launch. So what this UFO did was simply to upset that stable platform through the logic coupler, which is simply a computer that takes that information to establish location of the missile in flight. So that's all it did. It upset the stable platform, and that's why it shut down the missiles. The missiles could not be launched because if they were launched, they wouldn't know where to go. Basically, simply, they wouldn't know how to calculate their position, and they wouldn't be able to go on target. So that's why they just shut down. So there was no damage done to the systems.
All right. So Robert, Bob, Hurlin is thinking of today. You're talking about 1960. So what about our technology that we have today? And I'm sure their technology has advanced, and maybe I can answer my own question, but would they still have that capabilities, or is it happening still today?
Oh,
yeah.
Yeah, it's still happening. We have reporting 2010, 2018 of similar incidents. So the ETs are way ahead of us in technology, and whatever we do to improve our technology or systems, they'll be right on top of it. They knew then in '67 exactly how our missile systems worked in great detail, and I'm sure they know the same today. So I hope that answers.
Yes, it did. All right, we're going to get back to you, Byron. Jim, you had another question, and then we'll go to Byron. You should be done eating, buying, all of that good stuff. Or you already done, Byron?
Robert, is it possible that the U.S. government is in cahoots? I understand. Is in cahoots with a specific alien race that has allowed us to reverse engineer?
I doubt it. Of course, I don't know. I know that there are, let's say, reports of incidents where there was direct contact with our government and extraterrestrial races, and I think that is, there's some possibility that has happened, because there have been some reports, some fairly credible reports, but I couldn't tell you that has happened for sure. But whether or not ET is, under contract with our government or come to some agreements, I kind of doubt it. But, that's all speculative. I have no way of knowing.
All right. Appreciate it, Jim. Byron, you got a question now? You finished eating? You in a good place?
I picked up the food, but I'll chomp offline. Robert, I have a fairly simple question. I'm very familiar with your story. I've heard it in various versions since at least the National Press Club conference. And what I'm curious about is this: given that you have come forward as a whistleblower, what's the most interesting information that people have approached you with or have disclosed to you that you think is really credible, that you think is non-obvious?
Well, okay, I'll say this. I think we have constructed something that looks like a UFO and something that operates a little like a UFO, although I don't know how advanced they've gotten with it. But I do know they had, let's say I'm convinced that they have the cabal, let's say, have a program of re-engineering or engineering UFO objects, and have flight tested them. So that's probably the most dramatic thing I've learned from my experiences. I won't go into how I know that, but I'm pretty confident that's happened.
All right. So, Doc, you're up with Bob. What's your question today?
Hey, Bob. Yeah, real quick. I was just curious, out of all the, potential technology or things that you're aware of that we've discovered, what's either the most alarming or exciting technology for human beings, or, aka cabal or whatever, that humanity can expect in the next, short-term future?
That's quite a question. Could you restate the question a little again? Make it a little more simple.
Yeah. So out of all the technological advances or UFO findings, what technology that has been, discovered, whether confidential or not, would be the most exciting or alarming to you from the UFO space?
Well, I don't have any answers. I'm not an insider with the cabal. I don't know exactly what they've discovered. I think probably the most exciting stuff that they're looking at is how it is these objects are able to defy gravity, and get to hypersonic speeds very quickly, and possibly how it is that they can the extraterrestrials can withstand G forces in the hundreds. Those are the kind of details that, again, I'm not privy to, but I think we've probably come a long way in trying to understand this new technology in some respects. But I don't think we've got all the answers yet. But probably I'm kind of hedging because some of this new technology is very advanced science. When I say advanced science, I'm talking about understanding quantum physics in much greater depth than we understand it now. For example, things like negative energy or negative mass, which is just in the embryonic stage of understanding of some of the top physicists.
All right. So, Robert, we got probably a couple more people asking questions. We'll get you out of here in the next 10 or 15 minutes. That fair enough?
Okay.
All right. All right. So, Drew has a question for you. And, Drew, go ahead. You're on up.
Hey, thank you so much, Roderick. And Bob, just wanted to say thank you so much for taking the time to come into Clubhouse and speak with all of us. Curious as to what your thoughts are on Lou Elizondo, and if you think he's part of what you call the cabal, and if he's not, is he to be trusted? Can we, really put some faith into what he's shared? That's all.
Oh man!
Now we're looking at one of them off the record questions, right?
You want
off the record? Totally off the record.
I'm going to have to mostly take the fifth on that. I met Lou. He came to my house. They were going to film me for one of the programs that they were producing under the History Channel. And I said I would meet with Lou only if he would answer my questions about what, ATIP and what he did there, et cetera. And I thought I had that agreement, with Mr. Elizondo. But when he showed up and I started asking him questions, he wouldn't answer any of them. All I can say is I cannot have full confidence in Mr. Elizondo because he's been much too secretive about what he did and what his current connections are with the intel community and why he still has a classified he still still classified status. So I guess there's just a lot of questions I have, but I don't want to badmouth him. But let's say I don't particularly trust him.
You have your reservations.
Yes.
So you say that man came over and ate your cookies and left?
Something like that, yeah.
Okay. All right. Man, I'll be upset too, because them Oreos are some good things, to be. All right, so appreciate the question, Drew. All right, anyone else got a question? We got about 10 minutes, but here's the deal. Bob, is there anything we should have been asking that we didn't ask that you want to share with us?
Oh, wow. I think you're covering most of it. Right now, again, I'm pressing for open hearings. I put up a critique on the NDAA requirements for UAP. I put that up on my Facebook page if you're interested. Anyone wants to go look at that. Other than that, I'm writing another book, but I can't talk about that just now. No, I think we're good.
All right. So looks like we got a couple of people here that let's see. Let me look and see here. We got a couple of people. All right. We'll bring these last two up, Tiff, and then we'll go from that and leave it at that. All right. So Chris, you're up. Go ahead.
Hi, thanks, guys. Bob, thanks for taking the time to speak to us. My question kind of ties in with an experience I was going to speak on here with last week, actually, but I wasn't able to. I basically, as a child and with my mother, had a sighting of an unidentified object. that's stuck with me, and I didn't talk about for quite a while. By your description, it sounded very, very similar, and even just the mechanics of how it moved. Did it come down low to the base, or like what was the distance that you guys on that site had the sighting of it? Like how far away was it in terms of vertical height? Did it come down low, or was it a ways away?
Yeah, it was very low. What I could get out of my guys, by the time I got up there to talk to them, they had been told not to say anything to anybody, including me. But what I finally got out of them was this thing was just above the front gate, which is about 12 feet high. So I'd say, under 20 feet, this thing was just hovering above them. And by the way, these things have emitted radiation in the past. There's evidence to that effect that they emit radiation. So I'm wondering if some of these guys died early because of exposure to radiation.
If I may ask, what was that time lapse, if you have a sense of that, from when this incident occurred to when you were able to make it to try to speak to your people?
Well, the incident happened sometime in the evening hours. We were relieved the next morning. I'd say probably 9 in the morning. So, 8 or 9 hours time lapse.
Wow, that's quite a response, though, to have folks already contacting them and making sure that they're, keeping quiet about something.
Oh yeah.
So big and not understood. So I think that lends itself to kind of that narrative of secrecy that we see repeated over and over with these stories.
Yeah, well, you got to keep in mind two things. One, the Echo flight incident happened 8 days earlier, before ours. So the team that was covering this up was already in, they were already organized to keep people quiet, secret. And we had the Condon investigation going on at the same time. This was, it started in 66 and ended in 68. The Condon investigation, which was basically a whitewash. It was intended to simply give cover to the Air Force so that they wouldn't have to report to the public about UFOs. And I've got plenty of evidence to support that.
Wow. So, all right. So, Fadi, what is your question? And then I think Drew has one more when he gets back up, and then we will close things out. Go ahead.
Thanks for having me. At what point do you think, if ever, the whole UFO aliens thing becomes like mainstream, where it's just accepted and understood? Is there like a time horizon on that you speculate on, or will we forever be in secret mode?
Yeah, I'm hopeful it'll be this coming year. And the reason I say that is if Congress gets the strength to have open hearings, it's going to blow the whole thing wide open. It'll be front page, believe me. And when that happens, a lot of people are going to wake up to the fact that, yes, indeed, we are being visited by extraterrestrial civilizations. And that's going to go worldwide very quickly. It's going to spread very quickly. So I'm hoping that happens this year. I'm going to be pushing for it, and I hope you guys will help me with that.
You got us on your team, that's for sure.
All right, good.
Now, real quickly though, if that's the case, this cabal, I mean, the power that they possess, are they going to not let this happen though? Right? Because that's the zero sum game. They don't want, they give us a little bit, then they're going to take away, but they that's the last thing they want, because the secret is out, the power is gone.
Well, again, we've got a lot of people in Congress, a lot in the public who have had these experiences. I think we do have the advantage that I think over 50% of the public do believe there's something to the UFO phenomenon. And Congress people, senators like Blumenthal, Rubio, others have said they want to get more information. They want to get to the bottom of this. So, and we have an election coming up. So I think we, the public, have a good opportunity here to press our case for open hearings. And to me, that's going to be the tipping point. Well, once we get open hearings, this is really going to blow sky high. And there's going to be a lot of people that have a real, maybe frightening awakening that, oh my God, this is real.
Drew going to have a question, and before he does, I just got hit in our Stargate, is what I call it. Someone asked if we were to have a all-out scale nuclear war globally, could the extraterrestrials, or do they have the power to say, oh, let's shut all of this down, and ultimately you guys are going to have to use your bayonets. Y'all got to go back to the Stone Age and fight. Could they do that, or would they do that?
That's very speculative. I have no idea what the ETs would do. I don't think they want to see a nuclear war. They probably do whatever they can to stop it. But we're talking about on the order of 20,000 nuclear weapons out there. 20,000. A single one of those could flatten the city of Los Angeles completely. This is a nightmare scenario, having a nuclear war. But on the other hand, nuclear war is very possible now. Saudi Arabia now is talking about nuclear weapons. Right now we have 9 nuclear powers. 2 of them, India and Pakistan, are at war with each other, by the way. And they each have nuclear weapons. And they could decide to use them against each other at any time. If that happens, who knows what will happen next. So it's a serious issue, it really is.
Wow. I think it's, they're very serious, especially when you look at that and the power of nuclear weapons. And, it kind of goes back to, if you listen to Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, and we need to be an interplanetary species, we got to get off the planet. And it's like, they're like, let's get out of here before they blow each other up. I don't know what's going on, but then you hear the rumors, well, the ETs don't want us to take our habits off the planet. Why would they let us out there in the universe somewhere? But
exactly. Yeah, I agree with that.
Yeah. So it's like, we're not, So it's like that whole thing, again, I'm going to keep referring to the zero sum game. Nobody's doing nothing. All right. So, all right, Drew, what's your question for Bob?
All right. Thanks again. So, Bob, I was going to throw you another curveball and ask, what you think about Dr. Stephen Greer, but I think it would be better if I laid out my intent with the question. I think,
and give us a little bit of your background too, because people, we got, my show wants to know.
Sure. My background specifically. So, I actually work in the software industry. I work for a tech company specifically on the East Coast, and I run a website, or am in process of setting up a website called projectilluminate.org. The goal of which is really just to, gather the facts, if you will, the data that we have seen or that has been released from the government, and to bring together sort of into one spot a lot of the great content that has been produced, to ultimately funnel people towards, people like Bob Salas, Roderick Martin. That way you guys get a little bit more exposure to the mainstream. So with that being said, that kind of goes to the heart of my question. I think that people are really just hungry for content. They're hungry for knowledge. So, kind of diverting away from the Stephen Greer question and what you think about him, since he's sort of against classic ufology. Who, if you could make a recommendation to a family member on who they should watch, what books they should read, what direction would you point them in?
You mean about this subject?
Yes, sir.
Well, that's a tough question.
Well, what about that unidentified book that's happened to be something you?
Yeah, you can start with my books.
Yeah.
Well, I think what you're asking is who's the leader of the band in ufology these days?
Or more so, based on your knowledge and I guess what you've gleaned, having a security clearance in the past, maybe there's some things that you're unable to share due to your NDA. Maybe you could point us in the direction of someone or people, or your book, obviously, but maybe towards someone who has the narrative right or is the closest to date.
I struggle. I'm struggling to answer that. I really am.
All right. Well, go ahead.
One guy, of course, that I've been working with very closely is Robert Hastings, and I guess if I had a question, or if I were going to recommend somebody, read his book too. It's called UFOs and Nukes. But Mr. Hastings is not in the best of health these days, so I don't know. We can all be a part of this. Do your research. I could, if I had to, I could come up with a list of books for people to read. I don't want to do that right now, but everybody out there who's really interested in this subject, and I think the masses will be very soon. Like I said, I hope by this next year, this subject is going to be well talked about worldwide, and more people will be doing more research. There are a lot of good books out there, and I think we ought to all do our homework on this.
Yeah, and and I agree with you. In his book, if any in your audience you want to get a book right off of Amazon, we have the link up at the top right now. Unidentified, the UFO phenomenon and how the world, the governments have conspired against this. So again, it's by Robert, and you definitely want to get that book. So if you do, go ahead and support him today and hit that link up there. Order it, get your copy, get ahead of the game, get in the game. And that way we can all do some great things together from there. So, Bob, I want to thank you for being here. I know, we didn't really discuss a time, but you've been here a long time. And believe me, these questions can keep coming. We leave the thing on, they will keep coming. But in the meantime, I know you and I are going to do a lot of things together. And so we'll definitely have you back at some point. And as we go down the rabbit hole of trying to get these congressional hearings. So you got my support. If there's any message or any alarm or any sounding of alarms or get the troops rally, this is one of the places you can come at any time and sound it. And we're coming.
Okay.
And so our podcast, this will be transferred to the podcast, and we're in 59 different countries. So there'll be thousands of people downloading that as well. So I'll take this audio and put it there. And so once again, the message is there. So if there's anything else besides your book, or we need to go to your Facebook page, where else can anyone find and connect to hear about some of the things you're doing?
Well, like I say, go to my YouTube page or channel. It's Bob Salas. And actually, I've got I think it's at least 30 minutes long that talks about my incident in great detail. And so you can learn more about it there. But what I would recommend to all of you, again, is prepare for what's coming. I think we're going to get some dramatic impact from this subject in the coming year, and you want to prepare by reading as much as you can about this subject. So thank you all. Appreciate it.
All right. So we will talk with you later, and appreciate you, Robert, and we'll talk soon, and I'll give you a call. Yeah.
Signing off.
All right.
Roderick,
all right.
did
Signing
you leave
off. No, I'm good. I was just thank you, Robert, for coming and signing off, and I'll give you a call this week, and we'll catch up, okay?
All right. Take care.
All right.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. All right. So, guys, you heard a great conversation today, all right? And those are one of the things that we're going to be doing a lot more of here. We're going to have our guest here. We're going to be doing some things. If you've had an encounter or a big secret you would like to share and you would like to be on our show, visit my website, whythebigsecret.com. Look for the guest request page, and we're looking forward to talking with you soon. If you enjoy listening to my podcast and would like to support my work, there are several ways you can do that. You can become a Patreon supporter by going to patreon.com/whythebigsecret, or you can donate directly to Cash App or Venmo. You will find those links inside the show notes.